Welcome to Gnostic Informant and History Valley with Jacob Berman. Jake, how's it going?
I'm well. How about you?
I am good. A very busy day for me right now. I'm just trying to get things done.
Yeah.
And but I'm also excited to be here to talk about the life of Apollonius of Tyana. And we're going
Yeah.
to talk about that. Jacob has read this book written by Flavius Philostratus, second century writer.
He's third century, and he wrote it for Julia Domna, wife of Septimus Severus and mother of Caracalla.
So now we got the timeline down. Now we know where we're at.
Yeah.
Let's get into his life. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot. He does a lot of stuff. He goes
Yeah.
to a lot of different cities, meets a lot of different people. But to start off, I'll just start it off and then I'll throw it to you. He is a Pythagorean philosopher,
Mm-hmm.
and he's
He is.
very skeptic. It seems like. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you talk about it a little bit, so you could just take the floor.
Sure. So Apollonius of Tyana, he goes around. He's ministering his Pythagorean beliefs, and he's a philosopher, and he was persecuted under Emperor Domitian. Domitian banned the philosophers from Rome. And one of the most notable things, if not the most notable thing about him, is actually after he died, because after he died, his followers they started believing him to be the son of Zeus. Now, alternatively, his father is actually Apollonius Senior. So there are different versions of his parenthood. In some cases, it's Zeus. In other cases, it's another guy called Apollonius. And there are people out there that think that Apollonius of Tyana has significant parallels with Jesus. In terms of miracles, yes, because he rises from the dead. I mean, he wasn't crucified, but he rises from the dead, and he ascends to heaven. Like his body can't be found. They were taking his body on the way to be buried, and his body disappeared. It's sort of reminiscent to the Gospels when they say, "Oh, his body's missing," the empty tomb thing. So the way Apollonius of Tyana, the way his death is portrayed and his post-mortem is portrayed is somewhat quasi similar to the empty tomb narrative in the Gospels. The way Apollonius is mythologized kind of gives one the feeling that they might have thought him to be Apollo in the flesh, and hence the name.
That's actually what the name means.
Yeah,
Apollonius means,
it,
I think it means son of Apollo. I think the eus at the end of the name, it means son.
yeah,
Apollonius means the son of Apollo. Now he does pay tribute to, he does a offering, but he doesn't use meat. He uses like a cake, like a sweet cake, which is kind of interesting if you think about it, because you don't hear about that in these religious texts. You always hear about the offering of the ram or the sheep or the goat or something, and this guy's just offering sweet rolls to his god. It's like, it's kind of funny.
And Apollonius is quoted by Lucius as bringing up, talking about Euripides. He's talking about the writings of Juba. Like that's like big time Mauritanian, Ptolemaic, and very Hellenistic. And he talks about justice. He travels with a guy called Damas. He's apparently a student of his, and they're traveling together throughout the Middle East. In the sense, it does somewhat sound like his ministry can remind one of Paul preaching and ministering to the churches. Apollonius in that way is doing the same thing. He's preaching to the Pythagoreans and their households. Their if you could one could call them churches, I suppose. They're the equivalents thereof. And Apollonius, he also went on a ship that got shipwrecked, just like Paul, ironically, and Josephus as well. There's a shipwreck narrative in there. And in another instance, his father, he's in the mythological aspect of the story. His father Zeus is called Zeus Asbamius. So it's a sort of a different form of Zeus because of the title Asbamius that is in there. And the other thing is, going back to the parallels, there are some people out there that are mythicists. I think that Jesus didn't exist. They like to say that Jesus is a complete copy of Apollonius of Tyana. And sometimes they'll say, well, he's both Jesus and Paul. And I'm like, okay, well, Apollonius, he does have parallels, but the parallels aren't that serious. If anything, he's like a rival to Christianity. And that's really as far as I can take that, because Apollonius of Tyana.
Yeah, he's sort of like a more Hellenic version, like a more Greco-Roman version of this savior figure, demigod figure, like, you know, say like he and it seems like his main objective is he goes to these different cults, different cities. He goes to Corinth, he goes to Antioch, he goes into India. He's traveling the world, and he's meeting with these Brahmins, he's meeting with these priests, he's meeting with these magi, and he's updating their ways of doing these. What he's doing is he's looking at their rites, and he's saying, okay, where are you getting these rites from? Okay, they're ancient rites. I get that. Why? And then he's like challenging them on their rights, and he tries to change it for them and make them better. And it's almost like I almost want to feel like maybe this is like sort of an allegory of Rome, jumping into like Rome became at the time. Okay, so the time of Apollonius Tyana's life, 1st century Rome, right? At this point in time, Rome was going around and going into different countries like Syria, Judea, Egypt, even in the Parthian world, they were kind of spreading influence in there, especially Augustus. Augustus had a big control over the Parthian satraps, and he almost brought back some historians say that he was the closest one to bring back Alexander's empire, which obviously didn't happen, but they're saying if anyone was the closest, it was Augustus. Now, with that being said, this could be an allegory of influence of Rome on the rest of the world, is spreading these Greco-Roman ideals.
Yeah. And speaking on the influence of Rome, Apollonius of Tyana was taken in by the Flavians. He was a philosopher for Vespasian. It's in a very similar situation to Josephus being adopted into the Flavian household, receiving the name Titus Flavius Josephus. Now it says here, as soon as it was day and the wind fair from land, the ship was ready to sail. Crowds flocked to the shore, all anxious to embark with Apollonius, notwithstanding the small size of the vessel. It was now autumn, a time of year when the sea is not much to be trusted. The people who supposed Apollonius had power over fire and water and perils of every kind, all asked leave to go on board with him. All asked to leave to go on board with him. When he found the numbers were more than the ship was able to contain, and happening at the same time to see another vessel at anchor near the tomb of Ajax, he's either bringing up the anchor thing, and the anchor and the dolphin and the anchor is a big symbolism in the Flavian family. He cried out, "Let us embark in that vessel, for it is glorious to be saved with the multitude." After doubling the Trojan promontory, he bid the pilot steer for Elia, situate over against Lesbos, and to make it by coasting near Methamana. For there it was Achilles told him Palamedes was buried, and there his statue was to be seen of the height of 1 cubit, representing a man far older than even Palamedes was. As soon as the vessel touched his land, he went ashore and said aloud, O ye men of Greece, let us show our respect for this great man from whom comes all knowledge, and let us treat him better than the Achaeans did, by honoring him for the sake of virtue, who was so unjustly put to death. So, based on my reading here, it kind of looks like the ministry of Apollonius of Tyana seems to be portrayed kind of like projected into the Homeric epics. And this is in chapter 13, page 199 of my translation about of the translation that I have.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, a lot of the stuff in here is very, I don't want to say like boring or fluffy, but like it's like extra. Like it's really,
Yeah.
it seems to be really repetitive, and like he just kind of, he does his little vow of silence. After his vow of silence is over with, he just kind of goes away and goes somewhere else. He's just doing things like one by one, and the whole point of me bringing this up is that he kind of is very schizophrenic, just like Jesus was, like in the Gospels. He's just, what is he doing? Why is this all happening? Why does he have to? And for example, in the Gospels, why does he have to die on the cross? Why is that even a thing? Same thing with Apollonius of Tyana. Why is he doing all this? You just don't even realize, and the writer never really explains it. It's just, this is what he's doing, and this is who he was, and he worked these miracles, and he went into Judea, and he taught all these mysteries to everybody. And okay, cool. What's the point? You know what I'm saying? And like that,
Right.
That really is a question that I would like to hear somebody try to answer. What is the point of Apollonius of Tyana? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in another conversation that Apollonius is having over philosophy, there's a similar, it's not completely similar, it's quasi similar to something Jesus said, supposedly said in the Gospels. I'm going to read this. When Apollonius discovered that the Jove blushed and changed color at one time as if disposed to speak, and at another as if not, he the more urged his request, just as if he had no foreknowledge of his character. The Jove, as soon as he received a little his presence of mind, cried out, O ye gods, what shall I say of myself? I am not wicked, and yet I know not whether I can call myself good, as little or no praise can attach to the negative virtue of not having acted ill. Excellently observed, said Apollonius. You speak as if instructed by the Indians, as if you had learnt that sentiment from the lips of the divine Iarchus himself, for it is his own. But how or from whom have you received such opinions? For you appear as if afraid to offend. So the way that's expressed, "O ye gods," it kind of sounds like the character is complaining to the gods. Like, they seem to have somewhat forsaken him in this instance of philosophy. And Apollonius is talking to this guy that's complaining about this. And Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? This also does parallel Psalms. Was it in Psalms? I think it was in Psalms. The Eli Lema Sabafana. It's not quite the same. And just before that, there's a few sentences before that. It says Apollonius requested him to sit opposite to him and address him in the following manner: Young Egyptian, for you are, I suppose, of this country. Tell us the good and evil of your life, that you may be pardoned for anything you have done wrong by reason of your Jove, and praise for what you have done well, and may philosophize with me and my friends. And then the rest of it goes exactly as I read after that.
Yeah, and I noticed a thing about Apollonius of Tyana. Part of his philosophy is that he likes to be critical. He's very critical of different people, like in different. For example, let me just jump to an example.
Right.
Somebody tells him that he's praying to Asclepius, the god of health. And the Asclepius, he's saying, Asclepius is not healing me. Why isn't Asclepius healing me? And Apollonius tells him, he's not healing you because you keep eating dense foods and you're not being healthy. You're not even trying. He's basically telling the person, Asclepius isn't real. You got to get yourself healthy.
Right.
By praying to Asclepius, you're making a pact with yourself, is the message I got from it. So it almost seems atheistic. He almost feels like an atheist, the way he goes around and criticizes all these rites and tells people that no, that's not how it works. The way you heal yourself. Yeah, you pray to Asclepius. Yeah, you give an offering, but you also stop eating bad food and you start exercising and doing this and that. And it's actually kind of refreshing to read an ancient text.
Yeah.
And hear those type of philosophy being pushed. You know what I mean? It's like he's definitely a different type of character for the times. Now we got to get into his death. How does he die?
Yeah. So, according to what we're told by Lucius, Apollonius died at the same year Domitian did, or might have been 1 year later. So around 96, 97 AD.
Okay, but what exactly happened though? Did he keep his own disciples? I hear you hear a lot.
Once Domitian dies, Apollonius dies too, and that's pretty much the idea. He dies of old age. He's not killed. He's not killed.
That's a common misconception. I wonder where people get that from. People hear that he gets killed by his own disciples in the same way that,
right?
You know what I mean? Like.
Exactly.
That's kind of what everyone kind of throws around there. I wonder if there's a different source for that. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why do people say that?
And not that I'm aware of. I don't think there was a different source. So it sounds so Apollonius, like I was saying earlier, once he dies, they take his body to go get buried, possibly entombed. I don't remember. But I know his body doesn't make it because they look at it and it's gone. He ascended, apparently. He ascended to heaven to be with Zeus, something like that.
So it says he dies in the year 100 AD. That's what it says right here. And then another source right here I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's inaccurate. It's pretty. It ties in Apollonius' death to Domitian.
Yeah.
Yeah, around the same time.
97 right here I'm seeing.
Domitian died in 96. So to be on the safer side, I'm just going to say he died in 96.
Now, why are you saying that he died? Why does it have to be so the same as Domitian? I don't know. Why are you saying that?
Because because it says that he died. That once Domitian dies, Apollonius dies too. That's what the story says.
Okay.
It's strange, but that's the way it's set. That's the way it goes.
So it says, okay, now I got a list of some of his miracles. I just want to go across. I just want to read them out just so we can kind of touch on it. So it says that he had extrasensory perception. We already talked about that. When Emperor Domitian was murdered on September 18th, 96 AD, Apollonius was said to have witnessed the event from Ephesus in Turkey about midday on the day that it happened in Rome. So he's kind of remote viewing the death from Turkey while Domitian's dying in Italy, which is very weird. And then he told those present with him, "Take heart, gentlemen, for the tyrant has been slain on this day." So he was very against Domitian, but his brother Titus he liked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he kind of mirrors the church attitude. The church later on, and this is later on, obviously.
Yeah.
Later on, the church,
right,
post Constantine times, the church will say Domitian was evil. Domitian is damned to hell. While Titus and his father, Joseph, Titus, same name as father, actually, were both good. They were both, they were agents of God or whatever. They, whatever you want to call it. But that's basically, it kind of mirrors that. So you see a similarity there. But other than that, the comparisons with him being the same person as Jesus, I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think that the fact that they're both from the same century, born around the same time, they both are sort of these figures that go around and shaking the fabric of reality with their philosophy. Yeah, you can draw comparisons there. But to say they're the same person, but especially considering the death is not even close. Two completely different deaths, two completely different lifespans, two completely different parts of the world. I mean, you can say that's the writers were borrowing from each other. Yeah, that's fine. But to say that this is the same person, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say big.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of the exaggerated parallels between Horus and Jesus.
Yes.
In fact, almost, if not practically every single parallel between Horus and Jesus has been proven false.
Yeah.
And Gerald Macy is that he's that guy back in the 19th century that came up with those ridiculous ideas, and everybody else is parroting his work, trying to say, "Oh, look at this! Everything's coming from Egypt," you know, that crap. And now here's something that's really interesting I want to bring up here. So it says here, the people of Tarsus of old bore no kindness to Apollonius, because neither his continual reproaches nor the language in which he conveyed them were adapted to their soft and effeminate manners. However, at this time, they loved him as much as if he had been their founder and the great support of their city. It happened once when Titus was sacrificing in public that the whole city assembled, presented a petition to him which contained matters of the greatest moment. He said he would present it to his father and perform the duties of an ambassador for them. When he said this, Apollonius came forward and thus addressed him, "Suppose I could prove to you that some of the persons present are both enemies to you and your father, that they came to Jerusalem on an embassy for the purpose of exciting revolt, and that they privately gave assistance to those who were in arms against you. If I could prove all this, what do you think they would deserve?" "Nothing," replied Titus, "but instant death." "And are you not ashamed," said Apollonius, "to shew more promptitude in punishing delinquents than in rewarding those who never offended, and in assuming to yourself authority sufficient to punish, while lest you defer that of recompensing till you have seen and conferred with your father?" Titus was not displeased with this mode of reasoning and said, "I grant them their petitions, as I know my father will not be angry with me for having submitted to truth and you." So this sort of reminds me of the Jesus and Pilate getting philosophical in the Gospels, in the same way Apollonius gets philosophical with Titus. And what's interesting is Apollonius and Titus seem to be on the same side when it comes to the Jews. Apollonius is just trying to tell Titus to be a little bit more careful with his philosophical judgments of people.
Yeah.
But other than that,
you ready for this Easter egg nugget? So later in the Empire period, right before the Christian era, actually, late 3rd century, 272 AD, according to the Historia Augusta, Emperor Aurelian captures the city of Tyana, against the Palmyrene Empire. And he is about to destroy the entire city. And according to the Augusta, he has a vision where he sees Apollonius come down and tell him to spare the city. Now that is crazy, thinking that people were still talking about Apollonius of Tyana right before the Christian era. He was fresh on everyone's mind, being told as like, "Oh, look, we got a vision from him. Like he's some sort of god that can give emperors visions." So later on, this story doesn't even end yet. Right around that time period, so I'm trying to let everyone realize this real quick.
Sure.
The setting of the Roman Empire at this time, the Christian church is growing. It's almost taken over. We're a couple of decades away from the church totally taking control of the state religion. We're right there. Right now, there's the pagan Rome and then there's Christian Rome, and they're like this right now. They're both present. So right after that happens, right after this vision happens, people start making talismans. There's these talismans, these coins, these magic coins, with Apollonius on them. And they were said to be sent from heaven. And there were magical figures and columns erected in public places meant to protect the cities from afflictions. And the great popularity of these talismans was a challenge to the Christians. This is what's written down. And some of the Byzantine authors condemn them as sorcery and the work of demons. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is like, this is sort of fascinating that they both of these myths start around the same time, first century, and they both sort of grow. They both sort of grow all the way to the 4th century, and then they butt heads. And then we have the war coming with Constantine, and that's it. Christianity rules the West for the next 1,000 years. But I just think it's fascinating. You can't talk about Christianity and get deep and talk about the history of Christianity without talking about the life of Apollonius of Tyana. They have to go together. Even if you and I agree with them.
Yeah.
I agree with the Christians on this one. They are not the same. They oppose each other. They do.
Oh yeah.
Especially after what I just read. The church saw them as demonic arches that were being built in the name of Apollonius of Tyana. However, you have to recognize that people did believe that this was a Messiah figure who can come in visions and tell you things. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is his father, Apollonius, Apollonius Sr. sent his son, Apollonius Jr., the guy we're talking about, to Tarsus to be taught by Euphedemus for 3 years.
Yes. And he was in Antioch for a while. And that is the birthplace, I think.
Yeah. And Paul was at Antioch all the time. He was taught by 3 years by Barnabas. He was with Barnabas for 3 years. And then Josephus was taught by 3 years with Barnabas.
Antioch, Syria is the city, according to the Bible, where the word Christian first became a thing, where they started calling themselves Christians. The first time it ever happened, according to the Bible, is in Antioch, Syria.
Well, if you think about it, it really did start in Antioch.
Yeah, I believe
that's why Paul's there all the time.
And I also think that the Syrians, according to some reports, I don't know how true this is. I might have to ask a scholar this question. But the first Bible was written in Syriac. It was called the Peshitta, which means the straight rule, and it was written in Antioch, Syria. So that makes it even more convincing if that's true.
Another point I'll bring up is Edessa in early literature was called Antioch, and it's ruled by the same family that controls Adiabene. And Professor Eisenman had made the argument that Adiabene actually is Edessa, because Adiabene in Josephus's works is described as being located by Josephus as being beyond the Euphrates. You see, Church Father Eusebius puts Edessa beyond the Euphrates, which Edessa has been archaeologically located as being beyond the Euphrates. And in later literature, Helena is the queen of Edessa. In earlier literature, going as far back as Josephus, she's the queen of Adiabene. So it's the same family. And the thing is, Ananias of Adiabene taught anti-circumcision at their kingdom. He was trying to convince Izates, Prince Izates, that don't circumcise, man. It's not needed. But Eleazar, Ananias' opponent, this is happening in the late 8020s, early 8030s, that he's saying, no, you got to keep the Torah, Izates. You got to circumcise. You want to be Jewish, you got to circumcise. And Eleazar convinced Prince Izates to circumcise. It's a similar argument to the one Paul had with Cephas and James in Galatians. Some pronounce him Kephas. But anyway, Cephas and Paul had that conflict. Paul opposed him to the face over this. It got really, really ugly. But yeah, it's practically the same argument. Is it the same now? Is it the same people? No, it's not the same exact people. It's the same ideology being taught.
And at the end of the day, and this is we could probably close out at this point.
Sure.
At the end of the day, these are myths. So when you're writing, when we're talking about people writing myths, they're gonna borrow from each other. It's the zeitgeist of the times. It's in the air. It's not like everyone wants to say who copied who. It's not even about who copied who. It's about what the writer was going with. A great example is Dr. Josh Bowen. he brings up Eminem. Okay, well, why do you bring up Eminem? Well, Eminem might make a rap line. He might borrow from a Biggie.
Yeah, I remember him bringing that up on
Biggie or
my
Tupac or something. And it's
video.
not. Yeah, it's not that he's copying other rappers. He's referencing them and making something else with it. So it's not like you really can't say it's copying or plagiarizing. It's just making a new form of art with what's around. That's just how it's are.
Speaking on that, I'm gonna do a video pretty soon here on my channel about Manifu being very confused. Like Manifu's screwing up Moses in a big way. I'm going to show people that the story of Osiris is it's bunk. It's nothing. It's nothing that can help.
Well, Manetho also says that Osiris was a person that lived.
Yeah.
So like, we can't go off that as someone who's telling the truth.
Exactly. Because there's some people out there that think that, oh, look, this guy's saying the Hyksos are the Jews, but like, no. And the thing is, it's actually Josephus that's making that claim. I don't recall Josephus quoting Manifu to back him up, saying he actually thinks this.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
we could do another video on the Hyksos expulsion.
Oh yeah,
and how that became related with the Jewish Exodus. We could do a video on that later. But you got any closing remarks on Apollonius that we haven't mentioned, and do you want to tie everything up and whatever you want to say?
I'll give a conclusion. As for adding anything more, I think we've covered the bases on that. Apollonius of Tyana, long story short, is a similar person in the sense that he did miracles that resemble that of Jesus's miracles. The missing body narrative is identical to the empty tomb narrative in the Gospels. He was deified after his death. God is his father by a human mother somehow. And in contradiction, in some cases, he actually has a human father, which is somewhat of an identical paradox to that of Jesus. And Apollonius debated, he got philosophical with Roman government officials, just like Jesus did. He got into conflict with them and also was friendly with them too at the same time, which is also similar to Paul. He also got into conflict with them, and he also got into friendly conversations with them and worked with them too. It was it just went back and forth like that. He got shipwrecked, taught by 3 years by somebody. Tarsus is in there.
The shipwreck thing that happens also in the Aeneid, and I think in the Odyssey. Yeah, no one, not even thinking.
Funny enough, even Marcion got shipwrecked.
Yeah, so that shipwreck parallel, I see why everyone likes to go with it, because it's like, but I think that's just a very easy narrative to write about, because it's a common thing that happened back then. Shipwreck.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't draw too much attention to that, like some people do. Like, oh look, they both got shipwrecked. Like,
I'm just noting the parallel.
Oh yeah,
but I know there are people out there that over accentuate it and say, well, that's because he is Paul. I'm like, no.
Right.
There are people out there.
I'm gonna have Ralph Ellis on tomorrow or in 2 days, and I want to ask him, because I know he loves talking about that. Like, he thinks that it's impossible that the same. I've heard him say this before. And not saying anything bad about him.
He thinks that Paul is Josephus.
He will say, well, how could there be two shipwrecks? He'll say that. It's called having two shipwrecks. One ship gets wrecked and another ship gets wrecked. That's how it's possible. Like, what kind of question is that?
Yeah, and the thing is,
I'm gonna save my I don't even want to talk about it. I'm gonna have him on. I'm gonna ask him questions, and then we'll get.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, this has been cool. It's been about 45 minutes right now, and normally we do like an hour, but something's about to be going on here pretty soon.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. So definitely keep in touch, and we'll get another one of these episodes pretty soon. And everybody subscribe, and see you later.
Hello viewers, thank you for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends. And please consider becoming a member of the channel's Patreon page and or donating through PayPal, or donating through super chats in future live streams or in future premieres. Each donation helps me to continue to cover costs in order for me to continue to edit these videos professionally and high quality, so that way I can deliver the best content that I can to you, the viewers. Thank you.